Шановні колеги, ми продовжуємо робочий день.
We continue our working day now by phone. We will hear the first deputy head of the mission of the SMM,
Yes, I
Mr.
can hear you well on this end. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We are ready to listen to your report, please.
Thank you. Dear friends, first apologize that we are not able to broadcast this via video link. I'm addressing you today from the water filtration plant in so-called DPR-controlled Yasinovata. The situation here in Donetsk remains unchanged. Violence is concentrated around the same hotspots, including here in so-called DPR-controlled Yasinovata. Just this Monday, for example, SMM monitors positioned not far from this water filtration plant heard 19 explosions, both incoming and outgoing. Yesterday at nearby Avdiivka, they heard 25 explosions occurring in this area. Last week, the wider Yasinovata, Avdiivka, and Donetsk airport area constituted 43% of all ceasefire violations we recorded in Donetsk region. Areas east and northeast of Mariupol accounted for 10% and areas around Horlivka for 8%. The number of ceasefire violations in the vicinity of Svetlodarsk-Debaltseve road remained largely stable, accounting for just over a fifth of all the ceasefire violations recorded in the region. There was, however, a worrying development along the Svetlodarsk-Debaltseve road. Of all instances we recorded where artillery was used last week, 48% happened in this area. I was at the SMM forward patrol base in government-controlled Svetlodarsk on Tuesday. There, our monitors told me of the nighttime sound of artillery impacts and outgoing rounds. There was a sharp increase in the number of ceasefire violations recorded in Luhansk region. 979 compared to 209 in the previous week. Areas around Stanitsa Luhanska and Pervomaisk-Popasna remain the worst affected, each with some 30% of registered ceasefire violations. On Wednesday night, our monitors recorded over 130 explosions in and around the Stanitsa Luhanska bridge. Reflective of both a long-standing pattern and the SMM's around-the-clock monitoring, approximately 40% of all recorded ceasefire violations happened between 8 in the evening and 8 in the morning. The percentage of artillery explosions recorded by the SMM during night hours was even higher, 83%. Dear friends, violence does not materialize out of thin air. It requires weapons. And believe me, weapons are everywhere along the contact line, despite the sites telling us they have withdrawn them. A SMM unmanned area vehicle, for instance, spotted the presence of 2 multiple launch rocket systems in LPR-controlled Luhansk city on Monday. The next day, our monitors observed 4 multiple launch rocket systems near government-controlled Mikhailivka in the Donetsk region. Both locations are inside their respective withdrawal line. Both instances are clear violations of the Minsk agreements. For the past 5 days, I have met a lot of people. I have heard why these weapons have not been withdrawn. They tell me that they are afraid the other side might not withdraw their weapons at the same time. Basically, there is a lack of trust. This is to be expected. In fact, it was expected. It is the very reason why the OSCE SMM was tasked with verifying adherence to the provisions of the Minsk Agreement. Put simply, the drafters and the signatories to the Minsk Accords understood there was no trust. So they tasked the SMM to monitor compliance, in particular to see if the sides were withdrawing proscribed weapons and adhering to the agreed ceasefire. With monitoring, each side would know that the other side had complied. And with that would come trust, greater compliance, and ultimately normalization. There is, however, a missing piece in this jigsaw: access. Without access for the SMM, there is no monitoring. Without monitoring, there can't be verification of compliance, which means there can be no trust between the sides. Without trust, nothing happens. No withdrawal, no ceasefire, just the same bloody stalemate that we have seen month after month. And yet, the sides who need this trust still do not give the SMM free access everywhere. This week I have seen some progress. To help us cross Shastia Bridge, the so-called LPR removed mines. We saw something similar near Solote, where the Ukrainian armed forces removed mines and other obstacles to facilitate access for the SMM. Today, I intend to travel to Petrisk, where I hope those responsible for removing mines and other obstacles to SMM monitoring will understand the critical importance of unhindered access. Later we will go to areas alongside the Ukrainian-Russian Federation border in the Donetsk region, currently not controlled by the government. I hope there too there is similar understanding and that no restrictions are imposed on our freedom of movement. More than hope, I expect the sides will provide the SMM the access they have already committed to ensure. It is their mutual interest to do so. It is the interest of the 400,000 people who depend on the water filtration station here in Yasinovata, and the courageous workers at the plant who face the risks of mines and shelling so that the water continues to be available. It is in the interest of everyone who wants to see this violence come to an end throughout Donetsk and Luhansk regions, most of all the civilians who suffer, Ukrainians equally on both sides of the line. As usual, at the end of my statement here, dear friends, I would like to provide you about the latest mission numbers. As of today, the mission has 706 monitors, of whom 584 are deployed in the east. In addition, there are 306 Ukrainian colleagues and other 90 international staff working for the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. Are there any questions or clarifications, dear journalists? Yeah, please. There is one.
Well, 112 Ukraine TV channel, Olena Abramovich. Mr. Hogg, could you please tell if OSCE mission has noticed any kind of acceleration of activity of Russian troops, or maybe troops from so-called LNR, DNR, because there are some fears that some kind of escalation is planned. And regarding the last happenings which were in Crimea, were there any increase of OSCE observers in the border, not border, but in the administrative border of Ukraine and Crimea? And will OSCE try to negotiate with Russia to get more access to the objects in the Crimea? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I myself, I'm now traveling along the contact line in the eastern part of the country. As any other of my colleagues, any findings during our patrol, we reflect our daily reports, and I refer you to our daily reports that are available in the Ukrainian and English languages on our website, which do underline our findings and observations that our colleagues take here day and night. With regard to your question to the administrative boundary line between Kherson and Crimea, I can inform you that the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission, which is a civilian monitoring mission, has teams throughout the country, and one of those is based in Kherson. The main task of this team is to monitor the administrative boundary line between Kherson and Crimea, particularly the entry-exit crossing points Kalanchak, Chaplinka, and Chonga. Our teams there, especially in the past days, have systematically talked to travelers that go in and out Crimea, as well as to the Ukrainian border guard. We can not confirm immediately of happenings in Crimea based on the observations of our patrols. I can confirm that as of today, the SMM has increased the amount of patrols in that specific area, and with findings from the eastern part of the country, we will report publicly on our findings from the area of the administrative boundary line there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. There is one more question, please.
Тарасенко Violeta, Donbas Public TV. Mr. Hook, could you please tell what does OSCE think about DPR leaders' streets direct against Ukraine government after LPR leaders' car explosion?
Can you repeat your question? You are broken here. Please once again, the line is not so good.
What do you think about DPR leaders' threats direct against Ukrainian government after LPR leaders' car explosion?
Thank you for the question. I understood now. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission is mandated to conduct dialogues with everyone in Ukraine. And dialogue is the only way forward. We will continue to talk to everyone in Ukraine and through dialogue trying to create situations in which normalization at the contact line can be brought. It is important to note that any action outside the framework of the Minsk Agreement and that are not in compliance with the Minsk Agreement and which the mission will note will be reported in our daily regular report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. Are there some further questions, dear colleagues? We don't have further questions. Mr. Hook, thank you for being there and looking forward to seeing you here next week. Take care.
Yes. Thank you and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Шановні колеги, наступна подія.
Esteemed colleagues, the next